Welcome, everyone, from the campus of the University of Notre Dame. We're coming to you today from, as always, my case, the fourth floor of the main building, the Golden Dome, and also we're going to be joined by a very special guest from the third floor of the Golden Dome. So we're going to stay right here under the dome today for our meeting. I want to apologize to you because the last time we came together 2 weeks ago, I mentioned that we would be getting together with our provost a week from now. I know some of you tried to tune in last Wednesday. That was my mistake. My sincere apologies. We're going to try to go every other week with these live chats for this fall semester and then through the spring. It's an absolutely gorgeous day on campus. It's sunny, high 70s. Yesterday was the first day of classes, which culminated in the opening year mass, which was held in the Basilica, and it was overflowing yesterday evening with students and faculty and staff alike. And Father John presided. It was a great way to kick off a new academic year. I have to say that I think like others around here, and this is my 23rd year at Notre Dame, like there's been a rebirth, re-energized. Notre Dame has such a sense of renewal. As the students come back, you cannot possibly be but infected by their energy and their enthusiasm, and there's hope. You feel that there's so much passion out there in the quads, so much goodness that you cannot help but to be energized by it yourself. So it's a great time of year, one of my very favorite times of the year. And it makes me think about Ernest Hemingway, who, when he won the Nobel Prize for literature at the culmination of his work, the last novel of his being The Old Man of the Sea, many were astounded as he gave away his medal to a poor Cuban fisherman. And the Western media kind of descended upon him and said, how could you give this very prestigious medal away? And Hemingway simply said, because you never really own something unless you can give it away. And it makes me think about what Notre Dame is all about. Everything that we do, all that you do to support us as a university is to give ourselves away to the next generation, to develop these 18 to 22-year-olds and then some, to develop their God-given potential to the very fullest so they can go out into this world and make a difference. And it's a really exciting time of year as we get things together. And you are really privileged to welcome with me our new provost today, a good friend, an incredible leader of Notre Dame, and somebody who is going to have amazing impact on this place for years to come. John McGreevy began his tenure just about 7 weeks ago as the Charles and Jill Fischer Provost of the University of Notre Dame, officially beginning on July 1st of 2022. He's the sixth provost in the history of the University of Notre Dame. He's the second ranking provost, or second ranking officer. And as provost, he is elected by the Board of Trustees at the direction of the president, Father John. He has all responsibilities for the academic core at Notre Dame. John is a 1986 Notre Dame grad. He's an acclaimed historian. He in American and global religion and politics. And he is the Francis A. McEnany Professor of History at the university and has taught an award-winning teacher for many years. And he served for a decade as the I.A. O'Shaughnessy Dean of the College of Arts and Letters before taking a few years off to go back to the faculty to finish an important book that you're going to hear about that is coming out shortly, and then being elected to be the sixth provost. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming John McGreevy. John, great to see you.
Thank you, Lou. What an honor it is to be here. And I couldn't agree more that there's a kind of buzz at the start of the year, and I feel that too, and the wonderful weather and the packed mass last night. And I feel it even more acutely because I'm starting a new job, and that's exciting and fun.
Yeah, well, we're really excited. You've been on the faculty since 1997 now at Notre Dame, and then more recently, you've taught while you have been in academic leadership. But tell us a little bit about, how did you come to Notre Dame? I know that you grew up in South Dakota, and you came here, and tell us a little bit about your undergraduate experience. Where did you live? What did you study? What stands out from your undergraduate days?
So I grew up in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, as you know, and I was the kind of kid who always wanted to come to Notre Dame. My dad had been here in the 1950s. He's class of 59. And my parents never put any pressure on me to go any particular place to college. But when I was accepted at Notre Dame, I never looked back and had a great experience here. I lived in Alumni Hall for 3.5 years. So I was an alumni dog. And I spent a semester in London. And I was a history student, kind of fell in love with the work of being a history major. I took a bunch of, as we called it then, government classes as well. But just really sort of dove deep into my intellectual work and ended up thinking, well, should I go to law school, or maybe I should think about high school teaching, or maybe I should think about college teaching. I did end up teaching at a high school in Chicago for a little while, but in the end sort of fell in love with the more intellectual dimensions of the work and ended up doing graduate school at Stanford. And Notre Dame had prepared me well for that.
So tell me a little bit, Alumni Hall is one of the dorms that has gone offline this year, and it's going to be redone over the next 14 months to be prepared for the next 100 years of students. Being the historian that you are, if you could preserve one artifact, I mean, Alumni, if I recall, was built right at in the 1920s, and the Great Depression, and the time of Newt Rockne, who's who's engraved in the outside of that dorm. What about the history of that community sticks out to you?
This is not something I've studied, but it is amazing that they built South Quad in the 1930s, by all accounts, with football money. And you can look at my colleague Tom Blance's wonderful history of the university to get a feel for that. At the height of the Depression, taking unemployed workers and giving them jobs and building not just alumni, but our neighbor and rival Dillon and other buildings, including the Rockne building, ultimately on the South Quad. And I think that quad is beautiful. It's held up wonderfully. If I had to take a particular thing from Alumni Hall, it might be the little stone carving of Newt Rockne that's on the side of the building, or also something from the chapel. It's a beautiful chapel. Anyone who's ever had an opportunity to be in that chapel is quite remarkable.
So your family engagement, John, with Notre Dame, it goes back beyond just you and your father as alumni. Your wife, Jean, is the Catholic curator, the librarian for Hesburgh Libraries, and has been doing that for several years. And then you have 4 children, and your 2 daughters are students, graduates of Notre Dame. So tell us a little bit about the impact that over the years Notre Dame has had on your family. You also have siblings who are graduates of Notre Dame as well. 2
siblings, an uncle. So it has had a big impact on our family, and a wonderful impact. I think all of us who've gone here have a deep affection and admiration for the place. You do see it as a parent. I have one son at Loyola in Chicago, one son at Kalamazoo College in Michigan, and they're having a wonderful experience there. But I've also had 2 daughters graduate from Notre Dame, and you saw how powerfully it shaped them, and how much they gained from the opportunity to go deep into their intellectual work, but also to make wonderful friends, get involved in outside activities. With the one older daughter, pre-COVID, the opportunity to do study abroad. All of that in a Catholic setting really is quite magical, and that's part of the allure of Notre Dame, I think. And what drew me back to campus was the opportunity to build a really great research university that was distinctly Catholic. And I think that's a rare thing, that identity, and something that Notre Dame has to treasure.
So you mentioned that when you graduated back in 1986, you went and taught high school, but then felt this calling to get into higher ed. you tell us a little bit about that path, Stanford to Harvard, back to Notre Dame.
So, I often tell our graduate students, I applied to, I think, 9 different graduate schools, and I was admitted to one, which was Stanford. And, I went, and it turned out to be a great place, really strong faculty, amazing graduate student community. People became very deep friendships I was able to develop there. I had a hard time figuring out what to do on a dissertation topic. So I actually taught at the high school in the middle of graduate school, at Yale's Franciscan High School in Chicago. And that's not a kind of straight path, but that was a really good experience because it introduced me to the world of Black Catholicism in Chicago. And my first book ended up being about race relations in the northern cities and the role of the Catholic Church in both facilitating racial dialogue and sometimes inhibiting it. And then went back to, I finished the dissertation. I applied for a bunch of jobs. I got one job and one postdoc. So I had a postdoc at Valparaiso for a year and then took a faculty position at Harvard and was there for 5 years. And that too was great. I really enjoyed being at Harvard. It's an exhilarating environment. It was an excellent history department with many great colleagues. But there too, I was offered a job back at Notre Dame, which I didn't anticipate, and really felt, for lack of a better term, a kind of calling that this would be a place where I'd make a bigger difference, and wanted to come back to both Notre Dame and to South Bend and see what difference I could make, not just as a scholar or teacher, and that's my first love, but also a little bit more institutionally.
So, first of all, I mean, I've never met an arrogant person from South Dakota. The way that you tell your story could not be more self-deprecating, right? You only got into one PhD program, and it happened to be Stanford. Yeah. You only got one job offer, and it happened to be Harvard. I mean, if you can make those points in your kind of background humble, that's really saying something. But when you made the decision to leave the Harvard faculty to come back to the history faculty at Notre Dame, did you have peers looking at you and saying, "What are you doing?" I mean, it was,
a little bit, now this gets into the inside baseball of academia. I was an untenured faculty member at Harvard, and I came back to a tenured faculty position at Notre Dame, and so that was an attraction. But I did have people at Harvard telling me, "Oh my God, it's going to work out for you here. You're going to get tenure. You need to stay."
Yeah.
And honestly, it was a challenging decision. By that time, Jean and I were just gotten married, and we liked it there. And so it really was just, where do I think I could make the bigger difference? And I thought I could do one role at Harvard and maybe have a slightly bigger role at Notre Dame. And so that is really fundamentally why we came back.
So tell us about your scholarly expertise. I mean, it seems to me to be the history of Catholicism in particular, but how would you define that more specifically or more broadly as it's evolved over time?
No, you're right. That's a shrewd way to define it, although I never meant it to be that way. It's interesting. I was really trained as a U.S. historian, so 19th and 20th century U.S. history, and that's what I've taught for most of my career. I ended up doing a dissertation and then a first book on, as I said, on Catholics and race relations. And I fell in love with that topic. It turned out to be a great topic. And that led to another book, which led to another book, and which led to this current book, which I just finished and is just being published in a couple of weeks. They ended up all being on religious history. And I sort of moved out of the orbit of U.S. history to global history, which a lot of historians are interested in now. How do international trading patterns or diseases or traditions shape the globe? I didn't see that coming. I didn't plan for that when I started my career, but that's just the intellectual evolution of what I've become interested in over the last couple of decades. And Notre Dame had a little bit of a role in that because Notre Dame is so deep and so good in religious history and theology and other allied disciplines. You're kind of drawn to those questions if you're here in a way that you might not otherwise be. And so if I had stayed at Harvard or been at someplace else, my career might have taken a different intellectual trajectory, but I'm very happy that it took the way that it did, the path that it found.
So, John, sometimes our viewers see the dual role of a professor to be both an acclaimed teacher and to be an excellent scholar, researcher, as to be at odds, right? So some will think that especially top research universities, you do great scholarly research and you almost forget your students.
Mhm.
What's your view on that, and how personally, as a professor, were you able to embody those balances of an acclaimed teacher and a great researcher?
So I'm not the person to judge if I could embody the balance, but I have very strong views on this topic. And I'm happy to say that I think they were shared by my predecessors as provost and by Father Jenkins, that we as a faculty need to do both. We need to be excellent teachers and excellent researchers, and we can be patient and wait for people who can do both when we think about hiring.
Yeah.
When faculty from other universities come here, especially big research universities, the great state research universities often, they're a little bit startled at how much weight we place on teaching in our evaluation processes, including the tenure and promotion process. And every year, we might let one or two people go who might be successful as researchers, but are struggling as teachers. And that's unusual. And Notre Dame has to keep that. That's just a crucial thing. And so my experience has been that teaching has gotten better every year. Our young colleagues, there's absolutely no cynicism about teaching. They love it. It's why they're here. They're passionate about it. And I actually think we have stronger teaching potentially than we did a generation ago. Maybe we're paying a little bit more attention to it. So I don't see that tension can exist. It can exist in various ways and places at other institutions, and we can struggle with it here. But on balance, I think we're doing a good job of setting the bar for excellence in both teaching and research.
I think there's no doubt, John, that we have grown to be a much stronger research entity as a university. And my understanding is that the student teacher evaluations are the highest they've ever been.
Yeah.
So to your point, that is our faculty have become less just the passive transfers of information and more engaged in the act of discovery, scholarship, and research themselves. The more they've engaged their students, and it's really enhanced the quality of teaching.
Yeah, I see that too. And remember, not all teaching occurs in the classroom. So our chemistry professors and psychology professors, and sometimes our historians too, often have teams of undergraduates who work with them on various projects outside the classroom. They have undergraduate researchers. And more, that's becoming one way that teachers can have an effect on individual students. So yes, great in-classroom instruction. I think it's potentially better than it's ever been. But also we're seeing a lot more outside the classroom, but still really important teaching.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your own personal transformation, right? You had to be called to this profession as a teacher scholar, and then you become department chair of history at Notre Dame, and then shortly thereafter you become a very successful dean for 2 5-year terms, 10 years for the College of Arts and Letters, and then you go back, you publish and teach some more for a few years, and then you come into the chief academic officer role, the provost of the University of Notre Dame. How has that been for you to move more and more in both of those worlds, both as a teacher scholar and as an administrator?
You know, it's been fun. I actually like both worlds. Super happy the last few years teaching and doing research. But I also thought maybe I should try and contribute more. And that more turns out to be academic administration. And very few faculty members begin with the idea they want to do academic administration. And I was like that too. It wasn't of interest to me. But you're right. I did 2 terms as chair of the history department and found I enjoyed that and hoped I could make a difference there in that department. I then did 2 terms, 5-year terms as dean of arts and letters. And really, that's a big organization. And really found some interest in how organizations work, how you can motivate and hopefully shape large groups of people and point them toward productive ends, and how you think about the mix of administration, teaching, research across the whole college, and how you can help students and faculty achieve their goals. I found I really fell in love with that. I fell in love with the job. I thought 10 years was the right amount of time to be in it. And we have a great successor to me in Sarah Mastillo, who's still Dean of Arts and Letters. But I never lost that sense. And I've just completed a big book project, and I felt like it really was time for me to go back to academic leadership, and was just fortunate that I was able to do it here.
So you were highly sought after. I know that as a friend. You had lots of wonderful opportunities for academic leadership at other prominent institutions, but you held out to come back as provost here at Notre Dame. Why?
So I think, and I've always believed that, and I still do, that Notre Dame is one of the most interesting experiments in American higher education. It really is. And what we do here matters tremendously. And the opportunity to build a private research university on par with the great private research universities in the country, the Chicago, Princeton, Dukes of the world, but also distinctly and coherently and profoundly Catholic. Gosh, that's a huge, important mission. I think I said just a second ago, not all institutions have that clarity of vision, and Notre Dame does. And it's not easy. I don't think there's a path that anybody's laid in front of us on how to really be great and to be distinctly Catholic. But if we can do that well, if we can succeed, we've done something amazing, amazing for the country, amazing for the church, really amazing for the world in a time when country, church, and world are all in their own different ways struggling. So I just think the stakes are very high here. There's an urgency to it, but also a clarity of vision. And that's always what attracted me to Notre Dame.
So I'm afraid to say this in front of an acclaimed historian, but would it be fair to suggest that not only has anybody really accomplished what we're trying to do here, to bring together kind of faith and reason, superior academics and with a great faith tradition, but would it be fair to say that nobody has even seriously embarked on this path? Yeah.
I don't know if that's fair, in that there are a lot of excellent religious institutions,
Yes,
and wonderful places from whom we can learn a lot. And many of them are Catholic institutions, and some do some things better than we do. Where I would say there's a distinction to be made is Notre Dame, I think, is the Catholic place trying to play at the very highest echelon of this world of the private research university. That doesn't mean we're better than anybody else. There are Catholic institutions that are going to have deeper and more profound roots in local communities. They're going to have more low-income students. They're doing amazing work too.
right.
But there should be a Catholic place at that very highest level of the Princeton, Duke, Chicago. That's important because these institutions are important in our society and in our world. That's the real opportunity.
That's
and
great.
challenge.
So you were dean for a decade of the oldest and largest, and some might argue the most complex college at the University, College of Arts and Letters, where you have the social sciences, the humanities, and the arts. Three kind of distinct areas of the academy, all in one. What did you learn from your tenure as a leader there? And what are some of the accomplishments that you're particularly proud of that might help to inform your leadership as provost?
So I learned a ton, in part because I was working with great people in that office. And so they taught me things every day that I still value. And you're right, the complexity of it, I hope, gives me some preparation to be provost, because now as provost, I need to support our engineers, our business faculty, architecture, the Keough School of Global Affairs, College of Science, all the colleges and schools, and try and help them reach their highest ambitions and thrive. In terms of accomplishments, and again, it was a team, not me, I'm very proud that we increased the number of students doing a senior thesis to 50% of the students who graduate from arts and letters. I'm really pleased that we were able to revitalize and, in a sense, rebuild the Department of Economics and helped start the Lab for Economic Opportunities within that department, which has become one of our most impressive research centers. I think we did some things in the arts that hadn't been done at Notre Dame before, and film, television, theater is thriving, and art history, and design, particularly the design component of that department, has really grown over the last decade. And I could keep going. We sustained
about 5+1.
Oh, 5+1. Yeah, good. You are a well-prepared interviewer. So that was the program we started to do two things: to accelerate graduate student progress toward degree. Too many of our PhD students were really taking too long to get their degrees, and that's financially costly for the university, but also not helpful for them professionally. And so a lot of incentives were set up to get students through the PhD in 5 years and get them onto the job markets that await them. So very pleased about that. The second dimension of it was also to open more students up to non-academic opportunities and ways in which they can use a couple of PhDs from that program were hired in your office, I might add, and ways they can use their training in a variety of venues, not just university faculty positions. And so on both fronts, progress still to be made there, but very pleased with the progress that we did make to shorten that time to degree and to give our students, graduate students, a wider variety of career opportunities.
So, John, as you begin your provostship, only 7 weeks in, when you get up in the morning, what are you most excited by? What is it that makes the blood kind of course through your veins? And also, to put an Italian twist on things, what gives you most agita? What gives you angst? What concerns you?
So the agita is what I'm thinking about the most. That's the type of person I am.
Yeah.
And, it's a clear number one for me in strategic planning. Okay. So we had a transition in the provost's office. We had all the turmoil of COVID.
Yeah.
And so we're a little bit behind in developing an academic, we call it strategic framework. That is a way to think about what will be the 3 to 4 things here, the 7 or 8 things below that have the capacity in terms of students, undergraduate, graduate student, and professional, in terms of faculty, and in terms of our research that can transform Notre Dame for the better. And that's a big process. These could be $100 million investments or even above. And we need to figure out where we can make an intellectual contribution, where it's aligned with our Catholic mission. Again, how it enhances the education of our undergraduates, our professional school students, our PhD students. And so that planning process is where I'm thinking about the most every day. Second thing is just even building stronger teams with the deans and in the provost's office. We've never had a group of associate provosts and deans as strong as the group that we have now. They're just astonishing individuals. And I'm just trying to get them to really think collaboratively and to work together for the good of the university. The universities that thrive in the next decade, and Notre Dame's going to have an advantage here, by the way, compared to its peers, are the universities that can think as institutions, not just as a collection of departments or a collection of units, and not EO school over here or architecture over there, but as a coherent university. And so anything I can do toward that end is really front and center for me. In terms of what I like, it's a great office. I'm coming into an office with great people. What's not to like? I'm sitting here in the 3rd floor of the main building. I hear the bells of Sacred Heart ring every 60 minutes. I mean, it's an amazing atmosphere in which to work at such a great institution. And like you, just walking out of that opening mass yesterday and seeing the energy of the students, the fun, quite thrilling.
Plus, you live right down on Notre Dame Avenue. Do you walk to work more now, or do you bike to work more frequently?
So always biking. I save round trip like 25 minutes if I bike as opposed to walk. And my wife will be embarrassed if I say this, I even walk to the Trader Joe's, and sometimes, which is around the corner from my house, this is the new thing in South Bend for anyone who's listening, and sometimes take the grocery cart, bring back the groceries, and then walk the grocery cart back. So we're really trying to walk in our neighborhood.
Oh my God. I can only imagine your children making fun of you about that, walking the empty grocery.
Yes, exactly.
It's classic. Well, you're also a very avid tennis player. Tell us a little bit about that. You've been for a long time, and you have a regular Saturday morning sacrosanct match.
So I have never been asked in front of a national audience about my tennis capacity, but I'm very happy to answer that question. Yes, I'm an eager, not especially great tennis player, but very eager. I played in high school. I was on my high school tennis team, and then kind of life. We had 4 children. Life got in the way, and there was a period of time where I barely played at all. But there's a community of tennis players, roughly my age, men and women, who get together and play a lot of tennis at Notre Dame. It's been one of the most fun things for the last few years. So I have to say hello to Sam Kircheval, who's a volunteer and assistant coach with the men's tennis team. And he runs a clinic for adults, 7 a.m. Tuesday and Thursday. And he's got 12, 13, 14 adults there taking lessons from him in a kind of drill fashion. So we do that Tuesday and Thursday morning. And then my colleague, Mike Dash, usually organizes an early Saturday morning doubles game as well. So if I'm lucky, I get in 3 tennis games a week.
That's fantastic. That's how you stay in great shape.
It is. It's fun. It's really fun.
That's great. And you're a very good tennis player. You're just too modest to mention it. So you've written 4 books now. And in the most recent book called Catholicism, I think you should have a copy of it there in your office. You can hold it up. A Global History from the French Revolution to Pope Francis will be released next month.
Right.
How is this book different? I mean, that's a really broad range of Catholic global history.
Big picture. Yeah.
Big picture piece. Is this your opus work? Tell us a little bit about this book.
Yes, it is. And here, I'll show it again. Your Christmas shopping, all listeners or viewers, is over. Buy this book. And it's going to be released, I think, September 6th. And I do see it sort of as the culmination of my scholarly career. Like I said, I ended up writing a lot about the history of Catholicism, which I hadn't planned to do. And 2 things pushed me toward this book. One is all the historians who are interested in global history. And I wanted Catholicism, which is the most multilingual, multicultural institution in the world and most global, to be part of that story. A lot of people don't know that the majority of Catholics in the world right now are people of color living in the global South, in Mexico and the Philippines and El Salvador and Indonesia. And that's where the church is going, like a lot of global institutions. And I wanted to tell that story and tell it historically and try and integrate into that story all the wonderful books about particular countries that have been written over the last, say, 25, 30 years, and put it in one narrative. So that was one reason to write the book. And the second was a little bit more personal. Pope Francis has this really kind of incredible phrase where he says, we're not in an era of change. We're in a change of era. Mm-hmm. And I think he's exactly right. We're in a change of era politically. We're in a change of era religiously. And we don't quite know where we're going. Mm-hmm. And I think historians can shed some light on that. I think that was true in the 19th century, too. After the French Revolution, which was so disruptive for global Catholicism, there was a rebuilding effort in the 19th century. And part of that rebuilding was Father Sorin coming to northern Indiana and founding Notre Dame. Now in the 21st century, I think there's going to be a kind of rebuilding of Catholicism, too. And I hope this book, for everyone who cares about that project, is a savvy, smart guide to how we got to where we are. So 2 reasons. One is scholarly. How can we integrate Catholicism into the global history? But a second is more personal, kind of reflects on my interest in Notre Dame too, is how have we gotten to where we are as a church and where might we be going?
No, I in full disclosure, have not finished the book yet. What I found comforting in the book is I think that, we often in our society today overuse the word unprecedented. And if you look at, many would say that the church today globally is in crisis. Mm-hmm. Certainly the church in the United States, the Catholic Church in the US, with so much conflict and infighting, et cetera. But the fact of the matter is, when you look historically in this time period that you're talking about, the church has experienced many crises and has found a way to come through them and ultimately grow stronger. So it gives you hope.
Yeah.
By looking
Yeah.
back at history. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think that's right. And historians don't have a good record predicting the future, right? So we don't know what's going to happen. But you're absolutely right. This isn't the first crisis. The set of things that Catholics say in the United States face now, aftermath of sexual abuse, declining rates of adherence, other challenges. There were lots of challenges in the 19th century too, and lots of challenges in the 20th century, political, religious, and otherwise. I do think we're entering some kind of new era, and I hope the book gives, as I said, a kind of savvy introduction to where we've been and where we might be going.
So who, John, among your 4 children is your favorite child? I'm not going to really, that's not a real question, but
That is not a real question.
In the same vein, I'm going to ask, is there a favorite anecdote from the book that you would be willing to share? And I know it's like maybe another form of an unfair question.
So one thing about the book is each chapter opens with the story of a person. I really wanted to tell the history through individual people. And so I'll mention 2. One is this woman, Edith Stein, who some people will have heard of. And she, died at Auschwitz. She was killed because she was Jewish, but she had converted to Catholicism, and she was a significant philosopher in the 1930s. And became a nun, and then was taken by the Nazis from the Netherlands to Auschwitz. Her story is incredible. And I try and tell in a short way her story there. I also tell the story of a guy who was born in Cameroon. His name's Mabangai Akwa. And he was transferred to, or rather carried effectively, sent to Germany for his education in the 1880s. And had a remarkable series of events there where he became kind of famous in German Catholic life, the only famous dark-skinned Cameroonian person in the Germany of the 19th century, and then went back to Cameroon and was a missionary there the rest of his life. So those are a couple of the stories. You're right, it's hard to choose one, but there are amazing stories in this history. I hope I convey the richness of a few of these individual lives.
One of the things that I love about you as a leader, I love about you as a teacher, is that you're one of the most intentional and best listeners that I've seen. You ask a lot of questions. It may come to the root of being a historian, and even when you're presenting to large groups, I love the fact that you like to ask questions to the groups. What were the 3 things from the 1970s that have changed the most, through today, and to get people debating and hotly pursuing these big topics? You've got a big job as you begin Provost to be listening to the parts of the university that you haven't had to be as attentive to before, in particular the STEM disciplines. How would you alleviate concerns that might be out there that you're a humanities provost who doesn't understand the fast and moving and ever changing and growing world of the STEM disciplines, the growing importance of them? And how do you go about being a dean or provost that can be all encompassing?
It's something I'm thinking about a lot because, like any person, my background is somewhat limited. I will say, as Dean of Arts and Letters, I had a pretty wide purview, as you mentioned, but I have a lot to learn about the colleges of science and engineering. And I'll add to that the School of Architecture and the Mendoza College of Business. There's a lot I don't know about those areas. No great university in the 21st century is going to be great without a pretty significant investment in science and engineering. Thank God we have science and engineering. If we didn't, we'd be in real trouble as a university. And so I'm spending a lot of time meeting with department chairs, talking to senior leaders in those colleges, faculty and staff, and trying to think through what the puzzles are that confront us and how we might overcome those challenges. The good news is I don't have to do that alone. We have great expertise in the Provost's office on those disciplines. We also have a vice president of research in Bob Bernhardt, who's stepping down and who will replace this year, who's deeply invested in the success of those areas. So it's fundamentally important, but I think of myself as kind of a quick learner. And so I'm really diving in, reading their external reviews, that is their assessments of particular departments and programs, and trying to figure out what the best strategy is to move forward.
So, John, you do 10, 15 years, whatever, God willing, you serve as the provost at the university. In your mind, have you thought at all about how this place looks different at the end of your tenure?
I think about it all the time. We need to have more top-ranked programs. We need to have a stronger culture and outcomes for our PhD students. We need to be deeply protective of the excellence of our undergraduate education and push our stronger undergraduates a little bit more in terms of undergraduate research and learning a second language and really rigorous study abroad and global experiences. We should be more global than we are. We're actually pretty global already, but we're not as maybe intentional in terms of strategy about that as I might like. And all of that has to be framed in the one enduring constant and advantage that we have, which is our Catholic identity. That's what gives us outsiders, when they look at Notre Dame, see, okay, here's a really ambitious research university trying to be great in a number of areas, not going to be great in everything because no place is, but it has to be done in that Catholic frame. That's our enduring identity. It's the comparative advantage that we have, and how to think through that intelligently so that it advances us and doesn't inhibit us is maybe the key question.
So before we end our session today, any final thoughts? Anything that you would like to leave with the audience as you begin this very important tenure as provost?
Just fundamentally, what an honor it is to be here. And, all great institutions are bigger than the individuals that inhabit them. So when Lou Nani goes, the Development and Advancement Office will continue after him. When I go as provost, Notre Dame will continue after us, after me. And really the job is just to make the place significantly better while we're in the office, and then try and move on and leave it in a stronger place. And that's really how I see the role. It's not about personal advancement or anything like that. It's about really advancing the institution. And what an exciting job and prospect. And I'm kind of looking forward to digging into the school year and get going.
Well, I can't wait for the people that are watching this interview who haven't had the privilege to meet you, to get to know you.
Yeah.
And we're certainly going to have a chance to roll you out over the course of the football season as a new provost, but as people come back to visit campus, but also to get you out around the country and to meet people through the different clubs as well as other activities. And I for one, count myself among the many here who feel that Mary has kind of watched over and guided you into this role, and that we could not ask for a more selfless leader, more dedicated to the comprehensive mission of Notre Dame, and that in your own unassuming way, you're going to have a huge impact as a leader on Notre Dame going forward. So thank you, John, for this time today. Thank you for your leadership. Our prayers are with you. We're going to be joined 2 weeks from now, not next week, but 2 weeks from now, with a famed Notre Dame football player, Rocky Bleier, Vietnam vet, whose story, if you haven't heard it in all of its detail, is incredibly compelling. So join us in 2 weeks for another live chat on Wednesday at noon. And as we always do, John, if you would join in with us and everybody from your offices and homes, we always like to close these sessions with a prayer to Our Lady, the woman on the dome who guides and oversees all that we are doing at this university. So together we say, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Take care. God bless as always. Go Irish. Thanks again, John.
Thank you, Lou. It's been an honor.